Risk Committee meeting, staff, no media here, and we have some visitors as well. So, call for apologies. We have two, one from the Mayor and one from Councillor Brown. Would someone like to move those, please? Councillor, who's got the red light on?
Cameron.
Cameron, thank you. And Councillor Wilson. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried, thank you. Okay. Any extraordinary business? I know of none. No declarations of interest? No. Okay. Confirmation of the minutes. Page 3. Any alterations, amendments? No. Someone like to move? Councillor Cameron again, Councillor Wilson. All those in favour? Carried, thank you. Okay, I'd like to ask Derek Olsen to come forward. Welcome, Derek. That's it, he's been here before and knows where the light is, fantastic. So I'll just hand the floor over to you. We're being live streamed, so yeah, just let you take it from here.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee members and Chair. It's always nice to be able to present our report to those charged with governance. I will take the report as read, but then maybe just use this opportunity to highlight some of the key things that we came across during our annual audit, and that is probably relevant for the committee to take note of. I'll probably frame the discussion in 3 areas. Maybe firstly just touching on some of the new recommendations that we've made, reflecting on the key audit focus areas that we identified prior to the audit, and then maybe 1 or 2 other items specifically focusing on the annual report and how that can be improved. So firstly, maybe from the new recommendations perspective, again, that can probably be divided into 3 categories, where we had 3 recommendations relating to the IT environment. That's always quite important because that sets the tone for your control environment, and the Office of the Auditor General also places a lot of emphasis on cyber security. They're doing a new report currently, and as part of their work program, looking at cybersecurity across the public sector. So we also, as part of that, constantly highlight any deficiencies within your IT environment. So we had 3 findings there. 1 of them flagged as urgent, that needs urgent attention. Also then a new recommendation around the drinking water standards. That changed in the last year. So we are recommending that you report in line with the new drinking water standards or rules. Also, a big part of our audit last year did focus on the RDRML valuation. What necessitated that was the fact that Council, whenever they consolidate or incorporate the entities that they own into their own financial statements, they need to ensure that the accounting policies of all the underlying entities are the same as those accounting policies of Council. You would recall that in the prior year we identified that the associates' accounting policies did not align with that of Council, and as a result RDRML had to go through an exercise whereby they needed to determine what adjustments are required to ensure that the accounting policies align between Council and that specific entity. That necessitated a revaluation of the infrastructure asset, being the race, and effectively that meant that there was an uplift of circa 29 million, whereby it was previously carried at $1 million and now carried at close to $30 million on the balance sheet. So quite a big uplift just because of aligning the accounting policies between the various entities. We also made a recommendation around related parties, just an interest register that's required for executive members. Again, this is always a big focus area for the Office of the Auditor General. where they look at related parties, conflicts of interest, just to ensure that from a procurement perspective there aren't any related parties that might exist in the environment. Then, as I said, the second area is maybe just looking at the areas that we identified prior to the audit, the areas that we highlighted in our focus areas. There again, a big focus was this valuation of RDRML. We looked at investment properties, the valuation of that. We looked at your valuation of your infrastructure assets and any other assets. And we were comfortable that this year it wasn't required to perform a full revaluation because the movement from the prior wasn't material. So a fair value assessment identified that the movement wasn't material and therefore it wasn't required to perform a full valuation this year. Also, we looked at affordable water reform, the program. Because of that work, you would also see that we did include an emphasis of matter in our audit report. The council did receive an unqualified opinion, but with that one emphasis of matter relating to the uncertainty within the environment as a result of the water reform. Also, the new accounting standard that we highlighted, PBFRS 48, which relates to performance information. There's now an accounting standard that sets out what the requirements are when you report your performance information. And again, we were quite comfortable with how management reported that and adopted that accounting standard within their annual report. The only other item that I would like to highlight is maybe just around the preparation of the annual report. And you know, I'm probably going to sound like a broken record, but I keep on saying that probably one of the key controls that one can implement is to have a robust quality review process of the annual report before it gets submitted for audit. Unfortunately, we still did identify some errors this year in the annual report that required correction, but I must say it was a vast improvement from the prior year. So really want to thank and commend management for the progress that they've made in this space. Maybe one area that still I need to flag and highlight is the area around the commitments, because again we did identify errors in commitments, and that is as a result of the decentralized way in which information is collated. So the various departments each have their own contracts register and maintain that. It would be ideal if there was one centralized contract register, either through IT software or a better system to manage your contracts, that it's centralized, and then one would be able to know what your commitments are at any specific point in time. So that's maybe just something I would like to highlight from that perspective. But otherwise, really had a good open relationship with management. I think the audit went well, and we were able to meet the legislative deadlines. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Questions, councillors? Councillor Cameron.
The centralised contract system, do other councils use a centralised contract system, or does it vary around the country in your experience?
Chair, through you, remember, yeah, it does vary. There are different practices across the country. I mean, I think some are able to utilise the FMIS, the financial management system, with different modules to monitor their contracts and manage their contracts. Others, as does Ashburton, use separate spreadsheets and then try and consolidate that. But that has its own deficiencies because there's no proper controls around that.
No, and a timing thing and
yes.
Yeah, and a visibility thing. The other comment you made was the uplift of the $29 million due primarily to phasing, I'm imagining. Would that be right? Like when it...
Yeah, no, it's not necessarily phasing, it's aligning of the accounting policies.
Yes.
So RDRML carry their assets at cost,
yes,
and council carries their infrastructure assets at fair value. So to align it, they also needed to perform a fair value assessment or a revaluation to bring it up to in line with council's accounting policy.
And what is the benefit of doing that? More transparency, and why do you need to align them? What is the benefit of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's It's a requirement of the accounting standard. I think that the benefit for readers of the financial statement is that you are able to compare like for like,
Yes, yeah.
and then at least be able to know what your investment in that specific entity is worth.
Yes, I understand it, and that makes sense. Is there a legal implication on that? Is there, by not having them?
No, there won't be a legal implication besides the fact that you will end up not complying with the accounting standards, and that can result in a material misstatement within your financial statements and result in a qualified audit opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a question, but it's probably more for staff. If we change our system around the way we record those contracts to go to one instead of each department having its own, what are the implications of that?
Through the chair, we would need to find a common system to record them all, and that could be as minimal as some form of spreadsheeting through to a system that is aligned to our finance system, which records both. It will require resource to go and collate all of those contracts across our departments, so it'll be more a specific person as opposed to the department sharing that workload, and then someone to ensure that every time we have a council meeting and when councils approve the big contracts, they get put into this register, and then they're annualised as each year turns over to reflect the commitments.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? No comment from you, Hamish?
I think through Mr. Chair, we do appreciate the support of Derek, perhaps in particular, and there's always a little bit of tension in an audit and between our various teams. But Derek, we do appreciate that your ability to support a quality audit takes into account the pressures that exist at the coalface as well, and we tend to get acceptable outcomes. I think when Derek gets involved to help us achieve that. So we do appreciate the personal contribution Derek makes to a sound audit. There are always differences of opinion through an audit, and some of the work around valuations. Derek and I have had some conversations about. To Councillor Cameron's point, so what? But there are accounting standards, we sign up to them, and in the end we're all obliged to do what we have to do. One of the frustrations with RDR, of course, is that we're not RDR and we can't influence what their accounting policies are. And so it's all very well from an audit perspective to say they need to be aligned, and I don't disagree in terms of the accounting standard or what I understand of it. But actually, we've got no capacity to go to RDR and to tell them to go and change their valuation methodology as a 20% shareholder. And it's the same for Eastfields. We're not a majority shareholder. We can suggest and cajole and beg as much as we like, but we can't always. We're not quite as influential as perhaps as implied from Derek's comments. But overall, I think the relationship is in good heart. We appreciate the suggestions for improvement. Sometimes we've got our own really sound reasons why we say thank you, but that's not going to change. And I think you asked the right question, Mr. Chairman. The central register of contracts is something that is on our radar, but there are resource issues, there are complications around software, and we have to balance the desirability of achieving that with other priorities and other workflows. So we're continually aware of some issues, and even though we don't necessarily always action them in the speed or in the manner that the Audit Office might request, you can rest assured that we will have thought about it carefully and perhaps have a different perspective on the particular suggestion. So overall, I think this audit did go better. I'd like to thank Leanne in particular, but her finance team as well. I think the second time in is a little bit easier than coming brand new to a place, and I think the audit benefited from that. We're also pleased to have a much more stable finance team than we've had for a period of time. I think the audit benefited from that institutional knowledge and connections in the finance team. So it feels like we're making reasonable progress in this area. And as I go around the country from time to time, Mr. Chair, there are less pleasant stories about audits from some of our colleagues around the country than we experience here. So there's always a bit of tension, but it appears, at least from my perspective, to be in a reasonable state, and we're doing okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. Councillor Cameron, did you have one more question?
Yeah, well, I had a few comments really. Well, I had a question actually to our own member of staff. With regards to comments in the audit about passwords not being individualised and other, what seems to me pretty easy pickings, and reporting against the new standards for the water management schemes and things, are we going to implement those as per the recommendations?
So the simple ones, and you'll see our management comments, we're absolutely, and we had the conversation with audit when around the performance standards that we had the choice of the old or the new, and we chose to stay with the new the old because it came in partway through the year. So we had that conversation up front, and we always knew that this year would be going through to the new ones. I'm not sure if Tony wanted to add any more to that.
Hamish, did you have a...
No, I was also going to refer Councillor Cameron through the chair to the comment around that network password. There are good reasons why we thank the audit office for that view, but we think we're still perfectly secure with the way that is operating. This is not personal passwords, Councillor. This is the network access, and I assume it's Gordon's comment there. It sort of explains why we're satisfied internally that the security of the system isn't as compromised as perhaps the audit office perspective suggests.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, there's a recommendation on page 5. Councillor McMillan.
I'm happy to move.
Thank you. Seconder.
I'll second that. Thank you.
Councillor Cameron. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Derek.
Are we having trouble with the online meeting? Okay. Councillors, page 51. We're just having trouble getting Teams up and running with Murray. So, but the Bancorp Treasury report. I'm sorry. Welcome, Erin. We've all read the report, so have you got anything further you would like to add at all?
Not at this moment, thanks.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Cool. No questions? If not, there's a recommendation there on page 51 that Council receives the Bancorp Treasury Report for the March 2024 quarter. Someone like to move? Councillor Wilson, Councillor McMillan. Any further discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. Page 63. Management, Erin's back again. She couldn't go far. Management of accounts receivable. Anything further that you would like to add?
No.
Okay, questions? Oh, sorry.
Through the chair, I would just like to add that we have implemented and engaged and sent our first lot of debt for our rates debt across to our agency.
thank you. Councillor Cameron.
The cost of getting obtaining outstanding debt, if you like, what is that?
It's 10% of the debt.
10% of the debt.
Yes.
So any amount that monies that the debt collectors can obtain, we pay 10% of whatever it is they get, or 10% of the total. If they achieve, they don't get paid till they get the total, or how does that work?
Of what they collect,
yeah.
through the chair, of what they collect. They only charge us for what they collect. And where we engage them to do things such as mortgage demands, then it's a much lower rate.
Thank you.
Further questions, councillors? If not, once again, there's a recommendation there, page 63, that the Audit and Risk Committee receive the report of accounts receivable. Councillor Cameron?
Happy to move that. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson? Any further discussion? Put the motion, all those in favour? Carried, thank you. Page 67. Biennial Building Consent Authority Audit. Welcome, Michael. Anything further you would like to add?
Just through the chair, as I mentioned this morning, we've sent the last of the answers away. So I hope we head until the 24th of May, so we're trying to get on top of things a lot quicker, and hopefully they'll get ticked off by the end of the week.
Fantastic, thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Wilson.
I read the report, but it's quite technical in its detail, so it probably, it takes quite a few years of knowledge to understand it. Were there any areas which you thought were concerning, as the word, ones that triggered, sure there'll be some, not minor non-compliances, but compliances which are technical issues, but are there any major ones there that you felt we should be really focusing on?
Through the chair, no, the pleasing part of the report that we found that both on processing and inspecting, there were no technical issues found whatsoever. We had a high-performing team, very efficient, very knowledgeable, so that was a good finding for us. Most of the findings are actually kind of directed at me, because we're in an open plan office. We're in close proximity to all the other staff. We get things done, but we just need to record things better. So it's like doing an exam. You get 1 mark for getting the correct answer, but we didn't show our workings, and that's what most of the corrective actions were about, is just more detail in the workings.
Any further questions?
Yeah, just a quick question to Mike, if I
Councillor
may.
Cameron.
You were saying to basically record the evidence that you've had the discussion and made the decision. Do you have the required programming in place to record that appropriately? Like, do you have the necessary equipment, if you like, to do that? Okay.
Yeah, so instead of spinning around and going, Kate, can you action this? I've got to send her an email now to say, Kate, can you action
and
this?
document that in a program. Okay, so that's easy to do for you, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, we have the recommendation there, page 67, it's recommendation to Council that the Audit and Risk Committee recommends to Council that the Building Consent Authority audit report be received, and that Council be notified when the non-compliances are cleared by IANZ and the Council's accreditation is renewed. Someone happy to move? Councillor Macmillan? Councillor Cameron? Any further comment? Councillor Cameron?
My comment is in the recommendation. So does that mean the council, or does that mean the councillors will be notified?
Council, as in the council.
As in the team okay.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Page 116. There he is, Richard. So it's the EA Network Centre Income and Expenditure Report we have there. Have you got anything further you would like to add at all? No? Questions, councillors? No questions?
Yeah, there's always
Councillor
questions,
Cameron?
Russell, just,
Yes.
yeah, give us a minute to get
That's
there.
right.
I just can't see, the font is so small and I can't get rid of my left-hand column to look at it. But one of the variants, 126% was out of sync. Was that general, is that general costs? Third one down, operating expenses, variable costs, financial professional, promotional costs. Is that because of the long-term plan that the numbers aren't great?
No promotionals. It's general
twen-
costs.
It's a general
It's
cost.
general costs.
You've got to have blimmin' 20/20 vision to read this. General cost. Can you help me understand why that is, please?
Through the chair, general costs is a wash-up of a number of natural accounts that are all merged together. I would look to Erin to see exactly what is in that space, but it is a combined number of natural accounts, different codes that go through there. An element of maintenance is possibly sitting in there, and some other general costs associated with operating the EA Network Centre.
I'm just going to interrupt and welcome Murray. Can you hear us? Good.
Yes, I
Sorry,
can.
we had
Yes,
some
yes.
technical difficulties getting you. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're on page 116 of the report, the EA networks. Yep. Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
That was my question. I accept that, but I wonder if we can. Is that rather a large lump of general costs? Do you think we need to allocate that to a cost centre? I presume that's miscellaneous. General costs would be miscellaneous in layman's terms, would it?
Through the chair, if that is the wish of the Audit and Risk Committee, then we could explain further what is in that general costs area, but it would have to come back to committee.
One main column of 29,000. Oh, sorry, Hamish.
Oh, through Mr. I wonder if we could perhaps do that as a one-off.
Yeah.
But this is meant to be a summary report. That item is 25,000 out of $4.5 million
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
business. So it's kind of in the rounding a little bit. I'm all for having understanding, but we don't want to break it out in this report in any more detail, or this report will start to run for pages. This is meant to be a summary to give this committee the comfort of how the Network Centre is operating. And I think in this form it does it. And remember, this is a form that's been developed over some months to get to the point where it's hopefully showing an accurate picture. So let us explain that matter, but separately from changing the report, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Just to add on to what Mr. Chief Executive is saying, a few months ago we shared an explanation of how this report works. What may be best is if we recirculate that explanation, and that did have the breakdown within it.
Yep.
Oh,
Thank
that'd
you.
be great. Thank you.
you.
My comment, and I take your point, Hamish. It is a small amount. We just had our audit review. It's just quite nice to, if we don't need to have miscellaneous, to minimise miscellaneous. But I take your point. It's $25,000 on a big budget.
Councillor, sorry.
And if I can just add to that, if you look at the total variable costs, it is tracking well, very favourable to the overall total bucket for that area.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm probably further to what you've just talked about then. The rates contribution is the one that is probably exactly on budget, because it will be contributed with respect to, a monthly payment effectively to subsidise the running of the centre at 77%. I think you've talked about for the operating income at 58% in fees. Is that due to the issue we had early on?
Through the chair, that is in part due to the issue early on. The fees are directly representative of the amount of money people pay to come to the centre. We budget as best we can to get that on point, but it is a variable amount. But there is that issue that budgeting issue still carrying through in this report as well.
So do you think that obviously our operating costs are down and our income is down according to the period through the year, how do you feel that'll pan out for the rest of the season, of the year, to give us a, to meeting budget for the year as it was?
Through the chair, we are working as officers to reduce the variable costs to the best possible of our ability. Like with every business, costs remain and they need to be met. I remain reasonably confident in terms of trying to balance that the best that we can, given the environment that we are operating in.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
This report, as you say, the rates contributions probably we're looking. We had the report earlier on this morning in the activities briefing about the EA Network Centre functioning almost at the top of its capacity. So we need to, I know through the fees and charges you're looking at reviewing fees and how it's charged and all the rest of it, but clearly there's a mismatch there between capacity and what it's costing. So the costings are going necessarily perhaps up a little bit, but our capacity is static. Now that may be something that we can talk about with regards to the long-term plan and when we read the submissions. But, oh yeah, you want to stop?
No, Hamish, certainly don't want to stop it. Through Mr. Chair, I think what this does to a degree is highlight the point that's been made in this chamber over many years on a number of occasions, is that simply wanting fees and charges to equal a particular percentage of the operating costs you can't wish away the market. You can put the fees and charges up all you like so that they become a percentage in the theory, and then the market will respond to whether that's a price they're prepared to pay. And I think one of the things you're seeing is that people are utilising the facility, but there are price barriers to using it for paid programs that are either not deemed to be affordable, or people can get the similar service elsewhere in town for a very different price. And we've talked a number of times about the gym function. There are a number of gyms in town, and you can't just keep pricing the gym to achieve a theoretical fees and charges policy where the people can simply go down the road and pay what they think is fair. So it's a really good example of the pressure on usage and revenue, and we know the pressure on the stadium usage around peak times is extreme, and we know that at other times it's less so, but you can't make people with jobs and school kids, play netball at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday just because the courts are free. So there's a whole host of, nuances to maximising or thinking of capacity as the same thing as revenue, because they're related but not quite the same concept.
Thank you.
There is an element to the income that should be considered, that it isn't a static line in terms of income. We hit peaks and troughs, as Hamish just indicated, around stadium usage. So we're actually in our May and June and July are our busiest months. So we expect to see income increase when that stadium is utilised more. It's not a static line in terms of how income flows in and out of the centre.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Murray.
Am I right in saying that there's a budget number which is full year, the actual number is year to date? So we can't actually see what you're looking to achieve on a monthly basis, to the point that I think you just made. You're not forecasting monthly, so there's, December versus June is completely different. So we can't kind of see how you're expecting it to be month by month. Is that
That is correct. Yes, that is correct. This report doesn't demonstrate month-by-month budget. It demonstrates annual budget only.
Right. So I'm assuming this is till the end of what month?
March, 31st of March.
Okay, so there's a quarter of the year to go. I'm just kind of, where do you think we'll be at year end by 30 June, roughly, in terms of the overall result? Is it going to be, are we going to make up, yeah.
In terms of the income, remember that there is that issue that has carried throughout the year in the budget that is still sitting there. So if you remove that, I feel reasonably confident in terms of us meeting what would have been our annual budget otherwise.
Right. It might be useful. I don't want to put you to any extra work because that's not the point of the question. Just useful to see even quarterly forecasting.
I'm going to throw to the chief executive or the finance team on that one. They produce this report.
Yeah, look,
just take it offline. I don't want to create work, but it's just, when you see the number and you can't see the reforecasting even on a high level, you kind of can't see what we're aiming at for year end. That's all.
Yeah, through Mr. Chair, I think it's a very reasonable point. I think we need to move to. I would go so far as I say we'd have the history for monthly reporting on particularly income. There will be some work in that, but we must have history that suggests it. I think one of the things that we said around this report, and remember it's taken a little bit of time to get the report into this form. We trust it. We know the numbers are accurate. Some previous iterations of it were giving you an indication, but we were concerned they weren't as accurate as they should have been. So we've got to a point now where we know this is good information. I think the next change coming is to present it in a way that is more related to the actual timing of things, and then it'll start to become really useful. I'm not 100% sure quite what might be involved in doing that, but I think we can spread the annual revenue other than 1/12 across every month in a way that will make it a more useful report. So we'll take that back and have a look at that.
And that could be quite useful for the start of the new financial year going forward.
That would be the obvious time to introduce it. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. No further questions? Thank you, Richard. That brings us to the end of the open part of our meeting. So would someone... Okay, someone like to move we receive that report, please?
I'll move.
Thank you. Second to Councillor Wilson. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Someone like to move we go into committee, please? Councillor Cameron, Councillor Wilson. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you.